Music hold ended.
Good evening, everyone. We're starting a couple minutes before 7, and we just finished our executive session. So we're going to have a special meeting, and it's not my notes, but I'll go ahead and say this was an extension. This was an extension. We didn't get to all the agenda items last Tuesday night, and now we're moving. We want to get them done tonight through a special meeting. So we're not going to have all the items we normally have. So anyway, I'll go ahead and set it. I just want everybody to understand the expectations. So council members are attending this meeting remotely by video conference. Council approved this meeting at the February 23rd council meeting to follow the already approved executive session to review only those items that were not completed that evening. So Denny already had it in there. So tonight's meeting is available to the public on Channel 6 and through live streaming on Brookfield's website. Public participation is encouraged by calling 855-695-3744, and please press *3 to be placed in the queue for comment. Please note, if you would like to speak on more than one item on tonight's agenda, you will need to press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comment. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 to 15 participants get 3 minutes in the queue, or the first 15 participants in the queue get 3 minutes. The next 16 to 25 get 2 minutes. And then after that, you get 1 to 5 minutes until the 90 minutes has been completed. Again, the number is 855-695-3744, and press *3 to be placed in the queue. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name, neighborhood, and the agenda item the caller would like to comment on. Please call several minutes before the agenda item and press *3 to ensure you are in the queue for comment. So the special city council meeting is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson?
Here.
Castriata?
Here.
Groom? Broom?
She's absent.
Hinkle?
Yeah.
Hinkle? Dezersky?
I'm here.
Law Evans?
Here.
Lim?
Here.
Lindstedt?
Here.
Schaff?
Here.
Tessier?
She said she won't make the meeting. So I didn't keep count. Is that a quorum?
We have 7.
Okay, a quorum is present. Will everyone please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think it's fair to say one of the things I'm really looking forward to is having Boy Scout troops lead the Pledge of Allegiance. How about you guys? In an effort to keep, or Girl Scouts, yes. And in an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council to please utilize the video conferencing tools to raise their hand for comment, or when making a motion or a second. I will call on the first hand raised to state the motion and the second raised to make the second as appropriate. I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. Abby will be assisting with the timekeeping and will provide council members with a notification through video conferencing chat when 1 minute remains. Please ensure you are on mute when non-speaking. If a council member needs to leave the meeting, please inform me before doing so. First is council's consideration, a first reading of proposed ordinance number 2138, amending the Brookfield Code regarding the development review process. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I will ask staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. Anna Bertanzetti, Director of Planning, will walk us through this first reading regarding the development review process and changes, and also walk Council through the timeline for the recruitment for the bifurcated board, should we choose to go in that direction. Anna?
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor, City Council. As was mentioned, City Council is considering the first reading of Ordinance 2138 this evening. City Council has discussed, if we could see the next slide, public notice requirements, neighborhood meetings, the development review process updates, and land use recommendations at several public meetings over the course of the last year. Ultimately, staff found that there were two key takeaways from these discussions. The first key takeaway regarding the engagement throughout the process was addressed first when City Council approved an ordinance in August of 2020 to modify requirements for public notices, require neighborhood meetings, and modify the concept review process requirements. The draft ordinance this evening on first reading is intended to address that second key takeaway. Next slide, please. As staff was drafting the ordinance, we incorporated comments from all of the prior discussions with City Council. Some of the key changes based on the prior discussion are provided on the screen and within the staff memorandum. One of the other key changes made prior to the drafting of the first reading ordinance was the incorporation of a requirement for cell towers to remain with City Council's final review authority, similar to oil and gas facilities, which will remain with the City Council for final review authority. Next slide, please. So the development review process changes that are incorporated into the ordinance would allow the Planning and Zoning Commission or the Land Use Review Commission, as we'll discuss a little later, to make some final decisions subject to call-up provisions. For the following land use cases, these are final plats, site development plans of 7 acres or less, amendments to previously approved site plans that don't meet the current requirements for a minor administrative change. And then again, the uses by special review for the oil and gas development, except for oil and gas development, and it should say wireless facilities as well, would remain with the City Council. But other use by special review would have a final review authority by the Land Use Review Commission or Planning and Zoning Commission. Next slide, please. We provided example links in the staff memorandum for those various types of reviews. So you could see exactly what types of projects could be considered through the ordinance for a final review and decision by the Land Use Review Commission. Incorporating the changes could reduce development review times by approximately 6 weeks for the qualifying projects. Reducing the development review timeline would allow developments to move forward more quickly for desirable projects and would reduce staff time spent preparing projects for each step in the review process. Next slide, please. As drafted, Ordinance 2138 would authorize the city and county manager to sign improvement agreements unless the agreement included a financial obligation of the city and county of Brimfield. A call-up provision is included to ensure a council member could call up an agreement for consideration. Improvement agreements and subdivision improvement agreements are currently reviewed by the City Council, but these agreements are typically following a standard template, and they are based on the recommendations of the city engineer to ensure public improvements are timed appropriately to serve a new development. Next slide, please. And I should mention, again, just reiterating development agreements, vesting rights agreements, those would remain with the City Council. The draft ordinance includes a call-up provision regarding decisions that could potentially be made by the commission or the city manager. The exact process for that call-up is not specified in the ordinance, but there's some general information regarding the required timing and minimum notification requirements. The administration of the call-up was discussed in detail during the study session in December. It is included in this slide as well. There have not been any changes made to that proposed administration or procedures. Staff will move forward following those procedures unless directed otherwise. The exact methods for notification and reminders are not included in the ordinance to allow for flexibility in the future should council want to make changes to those procedures. Next slide, please. As can be seen in the general flow chart, council will ultimately still have final authority to call up any decision by the Land Use Review Commission. Next slide, please. With the changes in responsibilities for the Planning and Zoning Commission and a significant increase in the number of cases reviewed by P&Z over the last few years, this ordinance this evening, 2138, includes bifurcation of the current duties of the Planning and Zoning Commission into 2 boards. These would balance the the ability to be responsive to requests for variances, which continue to increase each year, and provide additional time for thorough consideration of the development applications. So through Ordinance 2138, City Council can consider dividing the duties of the Planning and Zoning Commission into two boards. First would be a Neighborhood Board of Adjustment, which would hear variance requests and appeals to the building and construction codes. And the second would be a Land Use Review Commission, which would have the sole responsibility to review land development applications, either in an advisory capacity or as a decision-making body, depending on the type of application. Next slide, please. The most immediate next steps will be the recruitment, appointment, and training for the two boards if City Council decides to move forward with this ordinance. Staff can begin the process for recruiting for these two boards immediately upon the first reading. We are actually ready to start advertising and recruiting tomorrow. The appointments would be subject to final review and approval of the ordinance after the second reading. So the exact outline for the recruitment procedures was included in the memorandum. As I mentioned, we're ready to start that tomorrow, March 3rd, and applications would be open from March 3rd until March 17th. So that's about a 2-week window for applicants to submit their materials. Beginning on March 17th through April 2nd, there would be an opportunity for virtual interviews through Spark Hire. So it's about a 2.5-week window for consideration and review of those applications. And then on April 6th, we have scheduled the second reading of the ordinance and can be prepared to bring forward the potential appointments for both of the boards that evening. Pending their appointment, we are prepared to move forward with training in late April and early May so that both boards can begin hearing cases in May. The first meeting of the Land Use Review Commission would be on May 10th, and the first meeting of the Neighborhood Board of Adjustment would be on May 19th. And this is one of the many steps that the City Council has been considering over the last year to help achieve the goals and priorities related to economic vitality. And this concludes our presentation this evening, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have.
Let's go ahead and move forward with public comments, if any. If anybody from the public would like to comment on this item on planning and zoning and our changes, please press *3. State your first and last name and neighborhood for the record. I'm not seeing anybody. Is there anybody in the queue? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on to council
Actually,
questions.
Mayor, I just noticed that Commissioner Mickelson is being screened right now from P&Z.
Okay, we'll see what.
It's that impulse.
Okay, I'll give a second for the screening to occur. And you know, I'm assuming because there is no room for public comment tonight for items that are not on the agenda. Because as I pointed out, it is a special meeting designed for us to get caught up. So, and Doug, I don't know if you heard that or not.
Yes, I did, Mayor.
Okay, she wants to comment on 3A. So let's go ahead and identify our Jennifer. Give us your name, your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes to speak on item 3A.
All right, thank you. Hello, Mayor and City Council members. This is Jennifer Mickelson at 13910 Telluride Drive. I'm currently one of your Planning and Zoning Board members, one of your most recent appointees. I just wanted to chime in and give you guys some of my thoughts regarding this ordinance that's in front of you today, and some of my some input from our actual experience. I do see the increase in the variances that come across, but I also see that there could be an opportunity to use that more online, virtual way to collect public participation, public input, and have those still be part of the current process. That's just one thought I wanted to throw out there. I do support the recommendations that you guys have about putting more responsibility for decision-making on the commissioners and the board, because that makes good sense. Taking some of that off of your backs, only take things up to city council, if they are the criteria that Anna provided, larger cases, controversial, and that as a win-win for everyone. You guys get some time back, we speed up the process. I also wanted to point out, I think that the setbacks are the primary reason we have the variances, or one of the primary reasons for variances, and that I think really deserves to be bubbled up as quick as possible for more review as to what is appropriate in the current day and age. Those were the three things I wanted to express to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your service. Anybody else in the queue? I don't think so. People always move around in your screens. It's kind of funny, isn't it? So we will go to council member comments or questions. Questions from council. I guess now we're at questions. We're going to try to do the process we do. We'll ask questions now, and if people want to make comments one way or the other, then we'll have it after the motion. So, are there questions from council right now? And once again, we'll have the motion made, and then you can offer your opinions. Council or Mayor Pro Tem.
Just questions, Mayor. Thank you. The first question I have is on page 5 of the staff presentation. It's the chart of the potential changes if you want to put it up. But it's the last one regarding the use by special review with except for oil and gas wells. But I wonder, is that the right definition to encompass all oil and gas facilities? Should it be oil and gas facilities as it is in our code instead of just wells, which just means wells?
Thank you for the clarification, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, that is in reference to oil and gas facilities as used in the code. And before we bring this back for second reading, we'll make sure that the table is corrected. It is correctly referenced in the ordinance. That section is not modified and stays with the city council, but we'll make that change for the presentation in the memo.
Thank you, Anna. And Ms. Bertonzetti. And my other question is the training schedule on page 9 of the council memo. Is that the training content available for council review at this time, or is it still being created?
An excellent question. We do not have it ready yet. We will be looking for the direction after the first reading, and then we'll begin the kind of compiling all of that presentation material. But if council is interested in reviewing it, we'll be happy to share that with you when it's available.
Yes, please. I am concerned about the limited amount of training for potential commissioners and board members if they only get 2 hours. In the case of the variance group, or the land use group is only going to get 4 hours total of training. And I just want to see that and feel okay with it before we make our final decision, because I know we all have had to learn voluminous amounts of information on the fly. But if we're going to be putting this leap of faith into people who may or may not have experience, I would want to be assured that it's a robust training program, and perhaps it needs to be longer and start before 2 days before their first meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Lim?
In the on page 6 in our memo, it refers to that the land use group, if that's what we're going to call it, is going to be given a background memo similar, or typically it says, typically the same as what council is given. So I just wanted some clarification on that. So, I mean, is it going to be exactly like with all the categories that we see, like here are the sustainability considerations, here are the housing considerations, here are the, you know, and is it going to clearly list all the variances that are being asked for, you know, like ours currently is?
Councilmember Lim, we believe that's best practice as well. We currently model the Planning and Zoning Commission memorandums to be as close to the City Council as possible. There are a few items that Planning and Zoning Commission does not review, such as the improvement agreements. So those types of items are not included in their memos. But going forward, if Land Use Review Commission is making final review authority, that type of information would be provided to them, even though it's the city and county manager who would be authorized to provide that final approval for the agreement. It's important to understand the full package of when those improvements are being proposed to be made based on the city engineer's recommendation. So yes, they will be nearly identical to what the City Council receives today.
Okay, my next question is, what information will council have available to it from the land use committee to enable council to know the considerations that committee went through? If council is making a decision on whether to call it up or not, what information will council have available to it?
Councilmember Lim, in the December study session, we did provide a detail of exactly what would be provided. But generally speaking, we're talking the information regarding what was discussed, what the final action was, copies of their minutes, as well as we wanted to provide a summary of who spoke at the meeting, because we think that's an important part of the public hearing process to make sure that the City Council understands and is fully knowledgeable about who attended the meeting and what their thoughts were prior to the final decision of the Land Use Review Commission.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. If I missed that in December, then I needed that review, but that helps reassure me what we're going to see to make that decision. And let's see, am I missing some? There's a note on how long the setting of the appeal by an applicant can be in duration. So, and I seem to see an inconsistency between what the memo said and what was in the regulation, but maybe you can clarify for me that I'm not looking at apples and apples here. So on page 7 at the memo, it says the hearing would need to be placed on an agenda no more than 30 days from the date of appeal. But what I'm seeing on page 23 of the ordinance itself says 45 days.
Thank you for catching that, Councilmember Lim. The ordinance is correct. As we were drafting both the memo and the ordinance, we were discussing the challenges with trying to ensure the public hearing could be scheduled within 30 days. We believe the longer time frame is appropriate. We'll make sure that that gets corrected in the memo. I apologize for that mistake.
Okay, that's good. That makes more sense to me, because when I saw 30 days in the memo, I thought, whoa, that's quick to have things get on an agenda. So 45 makes more sense. Thank you.
Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So just in terms of questions, I want to be sure that the commissioner that called in has their questions answered. And I believe that the two pieces, and correct, staff can help me if I'm wrong, but the two pieces were, one, that we would continue the use of the Broomfield Voice or a similar electronic virtual platform for public comment, which I fully support. And I just would like to get clarification from staff on will that continue to be used, and what is that process? And the other thing, it seemed like that setbacks were a big part of the variance process and what's being discussed. And can staff kind of elaborate on that piece as well.
Thank you. Happy to do that, Councilmember Schaaf. So the first question is the Brimfield Voice. And I think Commissioner Mickelson was suggesting that we could begin utilizing Brimfield Voice more for the variance procedures. Currently, Brimfield Voice is used for concept reviews. And then as those projects proceed through the development review process, we continue using the Brimfield Voice for variances that would be considered by the Neighborhood Board of Adjustment. So these are standalone variances. We do not currently use the Brimfield Voice. That could be a new process that is implemented if we were directed to do so. There's staff time that would need to be devoted to that, but it can be completed. The second question was the setbacks. Sorry, it took me a second there to remember
That's all right.
what the second question was. Yes, setbacks are often something that is requested for a variance. We've seen a lot of covered patios in rear yards as people are trying to utilize their private space, especially with COVID the last year. Lots of outdoor private space on people's lots. And the current municipal code does not allow encroachments of those covered patios or pergolas over many decks. And with the small lots in newer residential areas, oftentimes property owners look to get a variance and request special consideration to allow for those encroachments. And that would be something that we would like to bring forward as we begin looking at design guidelines and other development standards that are a part of that effort with economic vitality. Moving forward, that would be something that City Council could consider modifying.
Right. Well, I appreciate all of that. And I hope from, for our public comment from our commissioner that I didn't miss any of the points that she made. I thought those two really stuck out to me, and I believe that those were the only two. So if I missed one, other council members, if you'll help me out. Just questions. So in the ordinance section, there was the Board of Adjustment, and it looks like that was actually the new what was newly created, whereas the section 2, which was the land use commission, that was actually more old. But section 2 talked about that this was the newly created section. So I was a little confused on that. And I don't know if my question is clear enough, but if you could help me clarify that the Board of Adjustment was the one that is the new section, the new board, whereas the land use is more of the existing planning and zoning minus some of the authority that the new Board of Adjustment would have. Is that correct?
Councilmember Schaaf, that is the way that we drafted this particular ordinance. It could have been done either way, but the way that we drafted it was that the new section was devoted to the Neighborhood Board of Adjustment, and we reutilized the existing Planning and Zoning Commission, but made modifications to it to keep the numbering the same for that board. Okay, all right, that clarifies it. So with this piece, for this entire time, an approval can come from one of those two boards. So would the quasi-judicial process continue to be in effect for council, even though that council may not rule on any of those things? Would we as council still be locked into that quasi-judicial process and timeline? An excellent question. Thank you for bringing that up, the opportunity to clarify that. Yes, it is a full quasi-judicial process because of the call-up procedure and the potential for the city council to need to make a final decision on that land use case. So that would be in effect. Okay. So then throughout, so once planning and zoning makes that final or that approval, then that quasi-judicial process timeline actually continues for another 15 days during that waiting period for council. One thing that's always kind of bothered me is that there's the possibility for council to reconsider a vote, and yet there is there's nothing really built into there, because most of the time, from what I've seen, those plans are basically signed
they used to be. I don't know if they are anymore. I don't know if mayor does this that night on DocuSign, but signs those permits, and basically those are approved that night. There is no kind of process for a reconsideration vote of those development plans. And so that's always been something that's bothered me, is that we do have the ability to reconsider for up to, I believe it's 7 days or till the next regular scheduled meeting. And so that's something that I would love to see built into this, if that's possible, for us to have the ability to reconsider a vote, and to be able to do that either for, within 7 days or within to the next, regular scheduled meeting. And then what I would love to see even worked into that is that quasi judicial duration is built into that as well, so that would preclude anybody outside of council or staff from talking about this project with the developer or with public until that whole wait period is completed as well. So I don't know if that's a possibility, but that would be something I would like to have built into here, is the possibility that council members can reconsider a vote. And I don't know, I would like to hear what staff thinks about that possibility.
I might answer that in two parts, Council Member Schaaf, and ask our city attorney's office if they wanted to add anything afterwards. But first would be the initial decision by the Planning and Zoning Commission or Land Use Review Commission. We do have built into the ordinance that is not a final decision until the call-up period has been completed. So there would be no signatures or recording of those final plans. It's not considered approved until that call-up time period has ended. With the second point, in terms of whether the ordinance could be amended to include a period of time at the end of the final decision by City Council, to have another 14 days before it's considered, or whatever the time period might be, a final approval, I would ask the city attorney's office to weigh in.
We believe that could be done, to add an amendment specific on this type of approval that would change the effective date from the normal 7 days.
Great. I'm glad to hear that could be done. That's definitely something that's always kind of nagged at me. So I don't know, for tonight, I mean, that was something that as I was reading through it today, and kind of that, and obviously that quasi judicial question spurred me on to the reconsideration part, because I wasn't quite sure about that. So, I don't have an amendment prepared for tonight, but perhaps, I can work with staff outside of this, or maybe staff has got an idea for what that amendment could be for tonight. And then it looks like I have 1 more minute, so I have one final question. With that, Councilmember Lim asked a great question, which was, what documentation would council be able to view for that call-up provision? And I was wondering, there is going to be that recorded meeting. Can council view that meeting in its entirety? Are we able to do that under this ordinance? Do we need to change that to allow that? Because sometimes you had talked about minutes and things like that, but are we able to actually view that entire meeting from the start to the end, public comment, staff presentation, all of that material?
Councilmember Schaaf, we'd be happy to provide a link to the audio recording or the Zoom recording if we're still meeting virtual. As long as it's provided to all of the city council, that can be included in the public record, and it's still a valid part of the quasi judicial process, and that would be allowed. We'd be happy to provide that.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. I think that just expands the kind of the information that is there. So I do appreciate that. That's all the questions I have. Thanks, Mayor.
Hey, Councilmember Jerome.
Yes, thank you very much. I was just going to ask real quick. We're doing this for efficiency and effectiveness, and more attention, quite frankly, for our development proposals that come through Broomfield. Do we have metrics set up that we can track, so in 6 months from now or a year from now after they are implemented, that we'll be able to look at those metrics and say, yes, this policy has worked for the purpose and intent of us in implementing it? and I haven't seen those, but I just thought between first reading and second reading, we could come up with those 3 or 4 metrics.
Councilmember Groom, we do estimate that about a third of the projects that the planning division processes in a given year could potentially qualify for the final decision by Planning and Zoning Commission or Land Use Review, subject to a call up. And at this time, we've estimated that that could be potentially, if not called up, a savings of about 6 weeks for those projects that are able to move forward. If there's a call up, there would not be a change in the review time period, but there would be a time savings if smaller projects were with a final decision by Planning and Zoning Commission. But we agree it's important to track as we implement new processes, similar to we are tracking our neighborhood meetings, the staff time spent, the attendance at those meetings, to make sure that we understand when new changes are implemented, what those what we are seeing come out of the new change. So we'll continue to do that moving forward if the ordinance is passed.
Yeah, and I guess I know that we've estimated the efficiency of the process. I just want to make sure that we know those metrics and they're written down, and we have the ability to track them. And so in 6 months or a year, we can actually look at the actuals and say, yes, this did support the issues that we had prior to implementing the process change. So I'd like to see them, whatever those metrics are. Thank you very much. That's all I had. That's all the questions.
Councilmember Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mayor. And I didn't have time to prep an amendment on this. And I guess I still might for second reading, but this idea came initially from Councilmember Law Evans. And, you know, as we start discussing, you know, the LERC in this case, or the Independent Housing Authority, you know, the discussion about ward equity of the membership, I think, is going to be important because as we give up authority as a council, I think it's important that equity is represented in these bodies, especially when these are making, you know, bigger decisions. So I think this is a great plan. I support it fully. I'm very interested in making sure that there's some ward equity amongst these 7 members, that, you know, at least 1 member is from one ward, and you don't have more than 2 from, you know, a single ward, something like this, because I think it's important that the whole community is represented. So I don't know if staff has a response to that, but just something I think maybe Councilmember Law Evans and I should talk to folks about after this meeting for second reading, because I think it's going to be really important as we change our authority around.
Jennifer, you want to respond to that? That's a good question.
It's a great question, and one that we were all just communicating about, Councilmember Lindstedt. So we talked about that earlier, and what the methodology would be as the applications are coming in, and ensuring that the staggering of the terms are also built in. So absolutely, we fully agree that it should be there should be equity of representation through the wards. We will do our very best. And of course, with anything new, we'll keep council apprised as those applications come in, what the numbers are, what we're seeing, if we need to pump up the volume from a communication perspective in any one targeted area to get the information out. So if we have a load of folks from one ward, but not necessarily the other, we're confident that we can, so we'll start with the broad blanket approach, but we are mindful of that without a doubt. And I do think that we should write something in so then it transcends current council and current staff, so that we continue to be mindful of that as we move forward.
That's great. I mean, I think I know Councilmember Lyons has talked about this a lot on other commissions too. Maybe we should have that discussion, but on these ones where we're actually giving up authority, I think it's much more important and relevant. Because you do have whole portions of the city that don't get the enterprise delivered. You know, they don't see it. It's very hard to communicate, and we just don't have the same equity of applications from someplace. So I think, you know, a little flexibility to make sure they're actually qualified so that they're not automatically put in there. But I think we should definitely talk about it for second reading. So I appreciate the thought and time.
Councilmember Lyons.
I just want to thank my spokesperson, Councilmember Lindstedt. I really appreciate him making all my points for me. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll go to the reading or consideration of proposed ordinance number 2138. Will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2138 by title?
Ordinance number 2138, amending certain sections of Titles 2, 10, 12, 15, 16, and 17 of the Broomfield Municipal Code regarding the development review process and Planning and Zoning Commission. First reading.
Is there a motion? Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that ordinance number 2138 be adopted on first reading and ordered published in full, and that a public hearing and a second reading of the ordinance be held virtually on April 6, 2021 at 6 p.m. as allowed by the City Council procedures and rules of order.
Councilmember Lindstedt.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Councilmember Schaaf.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to circle back with staff regarding a possible amendment to elongate the time of approval for the allowance of reconsideration and the period of quasi-judicial timeline. If that's something that we can put in as an amendment tonight, or if that's just something that I can talk to staff with post tonight. I just need to understand from staff what to do.
Councilmember Schaaf, I think we have the gist. If you'd like to, if we could just not at this meeting, but we'll draft something up and circle it back around for the second reading. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds fine. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lyons.
So question also for staff, ditto on the ward representation that Councilmember Lindstedt just discussed. Jennifer, is that something that you and Nancy, I'm sorry, the senior staff can draft and begin to help us bring forward?
Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson.
Yes.
Castriata.
Yes.
Jezierski.
Yes.
Law Evans.
Yes.
Lim.
Yes.
Lindstedt.
Yes.
Schaaf.
Yes.
It passes unanimously.
Mayor, I just wanted to make note that I'm here and I didn't vote.
Can she vote? Did Kent Groom vote?
No, I did not know she had joined.
She joined about 20, 30 minutes ago. So go ahead and call her name. I think she can vote.
I joined at 7 thinking that we were going to do 7.
Okay. Groom.
Yes.
There you go. Okay.
And I'll vote yes too. Thanks.
Did I stop you too soon on that one? So maybe that was my mistake.
I'm sorry, I didn't know Heidi had joined. I'm sorry, Councilmember Hinkle had joined either. Did you also join at 7,
Yes.
Councilmember Hinkle?
Yeah, a little bit before 7.
Okay. Do we get everybody? Okay, and I have Councilmember Hinkle as voting aye.
That is correct.
And I'm going to make a note to file that we'll never start a meeting early ever again. So let's move on to legislative update. We actually have a legislative update. We have a proposed resolution provided by Councilmember Schaaf, 2021-51. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which staff will summarize.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This evening, Todd Davis, our election manager, will walk us through this item, provide updates, and I know Councilmember Schaaf has also been tracking this legislation closely. Todd?
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Todd Davidson, Elections Manager. The bill which Resolution 2021-51 is referencing, House Bill 21-1071, has passed out of the House Committee on State, Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs February 22nd, with a vote to 6 to 4 after being amended. It is now assigned to the House Finance Committee, and a hearing date has not yet been scheduled. As amended, this bill would require the Colorado Department of State to develop and certify a tabulation system for ranked choice voting by 2023, provide a tabulation system cost-free to Colorado counties by 2023, build a system for risk-limiting audits of ranked choice voting contests by 2025, and create a state tabulation system to tabulate cross-jurisdictional municipalities by 2025. The fiscal note on this bill is currently slightly under $1.2 million over the next 4 years. Those costs would be borne upon the Colorado Department of State for development and implementation. If this bill passes, it does not require municipalities to use ranked choice voting. However, it does provide state support and resources for municipalities who choose to use ranked choice voting. It also provides financial relief to the county clerks who would otherwise need to acquire a tabulation system on their own. If this bill becomes law, the cost to implement ranked choice voting would be minimized. Council's passage of 2021-51 does not tie Broomfield's future to ranked choice voting or any other alternative voting method. It only indicates support of the state allocating resources for nonpartisan governments to access ranked choice voting. Should Broomfield desire to use ranked choice voting or any other alternative voting method, we would first need either a council ordinance or a council referral of the measure to a ballot for voter approval. Based on the feedback provided from council in January, staff is preparing a study session memo for April 20th that will cover ranked choice voting and approval voting. Council will provide direction that night on next steps, but based on the January meeting, it is anticipated that if council proceeds, it will do so via a ballot referral for voter approval. Per council procedures, this resolution requires a 2/3 vote of council. And that concludes the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. We'll move with public comments. If there is anyone who would like to be heard, please press *3. State your first and last name and neighborhood for the record. I'm not noticing anybody in the queue, nor in the screening process. So we will go to questions from City Council next, and then we'll move into the motion. Any questions, or we can move into the motion if there are no questions? Okay,
so is this, Mayor, I'm so sorry I didn't raise my hand.
Go ahead, Councilmember Groom.
Is this for the discussion of ranked choice voting, or is this to start working on the ordinances for ranked choice voting?
Well, first of all, the proposal right now is to support the legislative bill that's referenced, and only to support the legislative bill. It has nothing to do with ranked choice voting. And right now we're in the question phase. We'll move into the, we'll have, as we've been doing, we'll have the motion made, and then we'll have a discussion on whether we're in favor of the resolution.
All right, thank you for the clarity.
Councilmember Chef, did you need to add something to that, or?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a couple questions, if that's all
Okay.
right, Mayor. Thank you.
We're in the question period. It is okay, Councilmember Chef.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Davidson, thank you for the staff report on this bill. This is definitely one that I've been following and been involved with in the conversations in the drafting, and then I even submitted my own testimony for this bill as well. Obviously this is tied to council's conversation regarding the use of ranked choice voting for Broomfield municipal elections, and some of those concerns that staff brought forward and were expressed by some council members regarding cost. Does this bill take care of some of those costs and some of those concerns that Broomfield was facing?
Thank you, Councilmember Staff. Todd Davidson again. Yes, it would eliminate the biggest chunk of that cost, which would be the acquisition of a tabulation system. That was about $70,000 on its own, and then $70,000 per year as it went on. So the state would cover those costs, Councilmember Schaaf.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and at that point, the costs are much more limited at that point, and some of the advancements that could be made as well, and some of the conversations that are going on with Dominion, which is I think covers basically most of the state other than 2 counties. Is that correct, Todd, Mr. Davidson?
That is correct, Councilmember Schaaf.
Okay. Oh, go on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine. Councilmember Schaaf, in our presentation on April 20th, we will reference, depending on where this bill is in legislative process, we will certainly have a comparison with the bill versus without, and of both alternative voting methods.
Great, thank you. One of the amendments that was made coming out of committee was regarding the state audit and the rules, the risk limiting audit and the rules surrounding that and the time frame. Could you talk a little bit more about what that changed from the original bill and what that amendment kind of basically ensues for Broomfield, and what the implications would be for Broomfield on that?
Of course, thank you, Councilmember Schaaf. I'd be happy to answer that. The development of the risk limiting audit software that we use now, which is not compliant with ranked choice voting, took about $500,000 and about 4 years. And so this Colorado Department of State has asked for a little more time to develop that and test it and make sure it's correct. It wasn't an unexpected ask from the Department of State. And certainly they want to get that audit software correct. There is some audit software available that is currently being vetted by some of the people who helped write Colorado's current ranked choice, risk limiting audit software. And that would be available should voters choose to use ranked choice voting in 2023. It would cost a little bit, but that, $5,000 or $10,000 to run that audit compared to the $70,000 for the software, it's a minimal cost for 2023. And we expect the software, should this bill pass, to be available for the 2025.
Great, and thank you for clarifying the 2023 versus the 2025. The 2023 was in the original draft of the bill. 2025 was what the amendment put in there to lengthen that time. But and I appreciate the other options for what we could do regarding the risk limiting audits and the much lower cost for what that would be. So that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Mr. Davidson.
Councilmember Groom.
Yes, my question, and I'm thankful that if this passes at the state, it takes away the financial burden to the local governments, or at least the majority of it. But my question would be, have we looked at the past, I don't know, 5-10 years of Broomfield elections to see how many greater than 2 or 3 and more elections that we've had to see what would this be solving for us?
I think that's all part of the discussion we're going to have on April 20th. I think we should limit our comments tonight on this specific piece of legislation.
Well, I guess my point of asking that is, if we do have a kind of an identifiable problem or benefit that we could solve here in Broomfield, then I would support the state. If we don't, then you know, I probably won't support the state moving forward with ranked choice voting. I just don't see the benefit to Broomfield.
Okay.
So that's why I was asking if Todd had looked, or Mr. Davison, sorry, had looked at any of those past elections.
I really don't want to get into those discussions right now. I mean, because we need to have the April 20th, unless somebody wants, I mean, I don't think, I hear you, Councilmember Grove, you're not going to have enough information to know whether ranked choice voting is good for Broomfield tonight. You're going to get additional information as we go. And if that's your criteria that you need to have that information to vote yes, then maybe you vote no. So let me move on to council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-51. Pursuant to council rules, positions of support or opposition of legislation requires a 2/3 majority of the entire council. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-51 by title?
Resolution number 2021-51 to support HB 21-1071, ranked choice voting in nonpartisan elections.
Councilmember Schaaf, you didn't put your hand up, but I assume you want to make the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that resolution number 2021-51 be adopted.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
Okay, now let's go to discussion, and and Councilmember Grove, if you want to, you want to speak now, please do. I'll go with Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So I do want to, address Councilmember Groom's comments, because I do think that one, it is a separate conversation regarding whether ranked choice voting is good for Broomfield. I think that one of the things that I'm hoping I can get council support on is that if we do move forward with ranked choice voting in Broomfield, that by the state passing this bill, it is going to make that conversation, it is going to take some of those concerns out. It's going to drop the cost significantly, and it helps that conversation for us. My hope is that this bill will get passed before council has our next conversation regarding ranked choice voting, so that we do have this in place for that conversation. But I do believe that by the state passing this, it helps our conversation, and it helps our situation should we move forward with that. So again, I think that those are two very different conversations, whether or not ranked choice voting is good for Broomfield, but this helps the conversation for us to be able to better decide that. So I do hope that my council colleagues will support this resolution.
Councilmember Groom.
Yes. So I'm still not really clear on why the information I asked is not pertinent to the discussion, but I'm just looking at a local election we get very low voter turnout as it is, and I think this is very confusing. So I want to make sure for Broomfield that there is a benefit, and it just doesn't put our local voters out there in a level of confusion, because this is a novice and fun thing to have. I think that we need to look at what is the benefit, what's the problem we're solving, and truly understand if it's something for Broomfield. I think we should have that information before we support the state. So I intend to take the mayor's recommendation and turn it down based on not having that information and not supporting it. But I look forward to those future conversations to get that addressed and answered. Thank you.
Councilmember Jerome, I've been informed that they do have an answer to the question. Jennifer, so I assumed that it had not all been prepared yet. So let's go ahead and Mayor or City Manager, Hoffman, did you want to speak?
I was just going to say that staff, I was going to say Councilmember Davidson. Todd, can you go ahead and answer Councilmember Groom's question, please?
Sure. There were the mayor's race on the last ballot, and then there were
She's
two
familiar with
wards.
that one.
And then there were two wards with more than two contests in the last election. I will have more, I will go back further, certainly, for the presentation on April 20th for you. So.
Yeah, perfect. I appreciate that. And again, I intend to just have that open conversation with council on what are the true benefits for our voters out of it. And I'm looking for that benefit to outweigh the confusion to the voters and make sure that we can keep climbing on our local voter turnout, local election voter turnout. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I just want to thank Councilmember Schaaf for his diligence on this issue and following the state legislation. And I do support, I haven't supported this conversation, still support the this movement towards ranked choice voting, specifically that allows multiple candidates to run in this nonpartisan race election here in Broomfield. And we have seen, I've seen at least 3 of these in the last few years. And I do think this is a step in the right direction, and appreciate that the state moving forward will actually save us some of the money and the work to get to this point as we potentially move forward with this decision. So appreciate all the effort here. Thank you.
Councilmember Lamb.
And I would say I appreciate the staff's quick response, at least with the last ballots information on the greater than 2 races, greater than 2 candidates in the race. But what I would also say is we're not looking at the historical data, we're also looking at the future. So, you know, the question also becomes, should we consider, does changing our system or the ability to be cost effective in changing to ranked choice voting, positively impact future races? So will it be, we've raised questions, will it be more equitable for others to run in the future if we have ranked choice voting? And certainly it's going to be easier to make that decision when it's not as expensive based on state legislation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm going to say this as a question. I'll make a comment. My understanding is that Boulder did pass a charter amendment requiring the mayor to be voted with ranked choice voting, and so Devin's nodding his head. So that wasn't a question; it was a comment. So so the necessity for the state to address this, and everywhere you go, ranked choice voting is coming up. I guess I'll give you my opinion. Having been in a 3-way race where I did not get 50%, and Councilmember Grimm was on that, and she was pretty close to me. I have no clue what the impact of ranked choice voting is. I'm really looking forward to the discussion. I'm concerned about some of the ramifications of it. But when I saw the legislation that was being proposed and recommended by Councilmember Schaaf, having state rules and audits, and the state wants to subsidize, makes a lot of sense to me. I don't get a vote in this one because we've got to have 2/3. Is it 2/3 present or 2/3? Anyway, but I just want to make a comment that I encourage the state to develop these rules because when Boulder passed that, I was just curious on how that was going to occur. And basically what the state is saying, it can't occur until some rules are in place. At least that's my understanding of the purpose of this legislation. So anyway, I will ask, I guess it's time to have the clerk call the roll.
Castriata,
Yes.
Groom,
No.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jaworski,
Sure.
Law Evans,
No.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Schaff,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
So then that it passes because it got 7 votes, correct?
Correct.
Just reading up here, the requires a 2/3 majority of the entire council. So 7 votes, it passes. Okay. The final item of business for council's consideration this evening is Councilmember Groom's request for future action. Councilmember Groom.
Yes, sure. Thank you. And thank you, council, for the consideration of inviting some outside counsel to talk to either the Board of Health or us as a council, however we would like to meet to hear that study session. The 2 people that I have suggested, Lynn Reamer and Dr. Karen Randall, are both from actionondrugs.org. And I sent the information in their bios in the write-up. And basically, both of them are very close to this area. Lynn Reimer is in the North Metro Drug Task Force in Colorado, and is very used to talking to people in our community. He's also been in the Broomfield CASA in 2010, and Dr. Randall has been in family practice, pediatricians, emergency medicine, and then came back to Colorado after supporting and being in Detroit and doing very similar things. And they do have a lot of experience in setting up programs. So as I wrote in the email, I know we all know the impact of drugs on our community. And I want to make sure and clear to whomever we bring in, we're looking for their input on programs and mental health programs related specifically to marijuana use, and not just education, but also how to support families, and not necessarily a Say No to Drugs campaign, but even more, and how to reach out and provide help. So what I'm asking for council is a thumbs up on providing staff direction to bring in these 2 consultants, or we can have an open discussion on staff making a recommendation on who they would like to come in and work with our team, if there's any recommendations staff might have.
Okay. I guess I'll go to public comments, because we allow public comments on all these items. I'm not seeing anybody in the queue. And I will then I'll turn it over to council for what says questions. I think this one's the direction. It's not necessarily questions. We're not going to vote. And so I'm going to ask council, Councilmember Groom has presented 2 people. She wants to address the council on mental health issues. She's asking, do we want to do that, or do we want to have other people? So Councilmember Lim.
I'm not sure if public health is available, but I mean, I would like to hear public health's opinion of these 2 individuals as being able to provide good, adequate expertise on this subject of marijuana and mental health? Or as Councilmember Groom opened up, would there be others that would be more beneficial?
Right, and the purpose of tonight is not to answer that question. The purpose tonight is to provide direction to council. And so you're saying that you'd like to hear from public health on what they would recommend.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilmember Groom, for bringing this forward. I absolutely support having a mental health study session, but I believe it needs to be more comprehensive to include all substance use and addiction prevention and recovery. I appreciate your suggested speakers, and I'm sure they're great at what they do with public education, but I think it's more appropriate for our internal health and human services department heads to determine the content of the study session with regard to crafting policy for the city and county of Broomfield. I know you all received an email from Assistant City Manager Abby Yelman on February 18th, and it clearly lays out what we're doing and where Broomfield as a community is going with regards to ensuring mental and behavioral health access. Having served on the Health and Human Services Advisory Committee since 2017, I think we all agree that we need to include cannabis in the larger discussion of all substance use and abuse. Our mission is to prevent addiction. It should include nicotine products, alcohol, and prescription drugs, along with marijuana. Thank you.
I'm going to pause and we do have somebody on the line that wants to make a comment on 5A specifically. And so, Thomas, you're, I've got your line, state your full name, your neighborhood, and you have 3 minutes to comment.
Yes, Thomas Botter, Broomfield Heights. I think that we need to take a step back. The city already has a problem with youth substance abuse, and we already know that marijuana is not the same as alcohol. As a matter of fact, it has been proven to be very detrimental to a youth's brain development, where alcohol has not. Not that we want our youth drinking, but marijuana is a problem already amongst our youth. And I think that anything we can do to bring in help to prevent it from becoming a bigger problem, we should do. I can't believe that the city council voted to put a dispensary next to a playground, but you did. And that's upsetting to me. And I can't believe that you're sticking your heads in the sand about the problem with the youth substance abuse issue in our community, but you are. And it's time to step back and slow this process down and make sure we're doing what's right, not just what's good for the city's pocketbook. We need to respect the fact that when youth are able to get a hold of marijuana, they're going to take advantage of it and they're going to use it. And especially with delivery, all I have to do is ask my 21-year-old brother, hey, would you please order some marijuana for me?
So, Tom, can I have you
to our
address
house?
can you address the issue in front of us on the assistance of mental health?
Well, it is part of mental health.
Okay.
Because each time a youth uses marijuana, it attacks their brain, and it's been known to cause mental health issues. And it is addictive. Although some of our council members would like to say it's not, it's absolutely proven to be addictive. So thank you for your time, and thank you for introducing some mental health people to help cure the problem that we're causing by introducing dispensaries in our community at places like next to playgrounds.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. We'll go back to have Councilmember Law Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to refresh my memory, I think the question at hand is Councilmember Groom's request to bring on board, to have a study session on mental health with regards to marijuana specifically. Since we are in the process, and I would anticipate that the regulations in some form or fashion will pass on second reading. I think that that's clear. So I would be thrilled to have mental health study sessions that feature specifically marijuana. I respect Mayor Pro Tem's stated desire to go ahead and talk about all different kinds of substance abuse. But I think the fact that we are actively engaged in bringing this substance legally for sale into our community where we never have before is reason to focus on mental health with regards to marijuana specifically. Lynn Reamer has actually presented to the city before years and years ago. I went to a presentation she did in the Ball Swan room downstairs long before COVID. I don't even remember what the Ball Swan room looks like anymore. But she's very, very good at what she does. And I would be, I'd be thrilled to have her. The other person that Councilmember Groom recommended is not someone known to me. I would, at a minimum, like to have those two and any other experts that our public health people see fit to bring in. That's fine, but these two do come with some pretty impressive credentials. And this, I would note too. Well, I'll save that for another day. But I fully support this request. Thank you very much.
Okay, Councilmember Lindstedt.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, of course, marijuana needs to be included in any discussion moving forward. And, I would really prefer to see staff select speakers and consultants and these types of things. I just think it's more appropriate. I think all 10 of us probably, or 11 of us know different professionals on various issues. And, I just think it's more appropriate for staff to continue filling that role. What I will say is, I think this discussion on marijuana, we focus so much on marijuana, but the tax passed to address, mental health and in general. And, we had some absolute tragedies happen in our community before COVID. And I think we need to make sure that we're thinking of, bullying and peer pressure and all these different things that might not be directly related to marijuana or even substance abuse. So I just, I don't want this discussion to single in on something when I think that the issue is much more broad than that. So all I'll say is I think we need to have a very, very robust discussion, and that staff should direct us with experts. So I appreciate the time, Mayor.
Councilmember Hinkle.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the discussion. As a person whose mother had paranoid schizophrenia and we moved from house to house to house, my mother never touched any drugs. So if we want to talk about mental health, let's just talk about mental health. And if we want to add in substance abuse in addition to that, then let's talk about that. But I think it is highly inappropriate to constantly correlate one with the other. And I feel personally, I'm trying not to bring my own anxiety into the situation, but I just don't want any shame in this too. And I've spoken to this before. I've never done marijuana. I don't have any plans on doing it. Although after COVID, I might, I don't know. But it's really telling that we're all of a sudden worried about marijuana when we've had marijuana in Broomfield, you guys. You can buy marijuana outside of Broomfield, bring it into Broomfield, and use it. And to say that all of a sudden we're worried now about marijuana and mental health that's also bringing out a lot of anxiety in me. So I think it is important that our staff really weigh in, like Councilmember Lindstedt, mentioned, and a few other council members mentioned, and that we have sort of a holistic view as to and like what others have spoken to, what problem are we actually solving? What are some of our highest problems in Broomfield? Westlake is in my district, right? We had a lot of suicides, and that's a mental health issue. So let's have this conversation that isn't pinpointing on one particular thing that actually saves a 6-year-old's life down the street from me. So, he needs marijuana to stop his seizures. So I really want to and appreciate if we can separate these issues and speak to what problem we would be solving. Because it's highly inappropriate to say that all of a sudden we have marijuana just because we're selling it in Broomfield. We've always had marijuana in Broomfield, and I want everyone here to know that. Thank you.
Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you. I support this conversation moving forward regarding substance abuse and mental health. I support Health and Human Services review and recommendations for speakers. My understanding is that Lynn Reimer would be a great speaker, but it'd be really good to get Health and Human Services feedback, and additionally have them guide the conversation to be more effective to council as a policy making body, as already suggested. Also addressing youth access, because that is a real thing, and so much more. And perhaps this, I understand that Councilmember Green brought this forward as mental health and marijuana, and I'm more than happy to have the entire session focus on marijuana, but perhaps this this could be like a series starting with marijuana and following up with other conversations, including other substances. And marijuana is not the only addictive substance. Alcohol use can lead to fetal alcohol syndrome when pregnant moms do use that, addiction, and more. And I agree with Councilmember Lindstedt about conversations even moving outside of specific substances. So I think this could actually be a great series. So thank you.
Councilmember Schaaf.
Thank you, Mayor. So council has a priority of mental health. And I think that's, council has been very adamant about the support of ensuring that we have a conversation regarding mental health, and that we take great concern over the mental health of our community. And so we have made that a priority, and I look forward to the upcoming conversations. Of course, substance use should be a part of the mental health conversations. It shouldn't be the sole focus. It is not the only component of mental health. But it should be part of the conversation, be it tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, other drugs, be them legal or illegal. So I think that there's a major conversation that we still haven't had with council regarding mental health and our priority for that. So I think that staff has a timeline for when we're going to start that more robust conversation. But I do think that that's a big part of it. I think that we would be remiss in not highlighting the current programs that are already going on, and the advocacy that the City and County of Broomfield does regarding substance use by youth and abuse by all users. And I don't.
The Access Live event has ended. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
All right, I'll start again, hoping that the music doesn't come on.
No, I mean, I told them they could go home because we're done with public comment. So they're signing off. And
so you interrupted me, Mayor. That's all right.
Okay.
I'm just joking, Mayor.
Yeah.
I don't know if staff can comment on that regarding the current programs that we have regarding substance use by youth as well as abuse by users. And I don't know if tonight is the appropriate time to highlight those programs, but I think there is a lot that we are currently doing and that we have done in the past. It would be good to ensure that council and the community are informed of those efforts that are currently underway. And then we've heard a lot about the community health plan that's being drafted. We know that is going to be coming out in much more detail in the future. And I would expect that substance abuse and or substance use by youth is also going to be included in that community health plan. So I think there's a lot that is already being done in this realm. And I would hope that before we can kind of segment part of that out, that we can get really a comprehensive view of both the mental health priority that council has set, as well as the community health plan, and really kind of set the stage for this much more detailed focused conversation.
Thank you. So I guess, our city manager Hoffman, we do have a mental health priority, correct? That we haven't had a chance to address. And so because what I'm hearing from council here is that everybody's interested in hearing more about mental health and having specific, direction. What I'm hearing from most people is they'd like the public health group not to eliminate these two from consideration. In fact, you know, have the public health group, you know, address these issues. I heard various comments about addiction. You know, you can't, you know, mental health is an issue separate from addiction. So, but what kept going through my mind is maybe we're talking about accelerating, you know, report back from the, from the public health group on the where we're at on our mental health issue or priority.
Yes, Mayor. So from a staff perspective and from a community perspective, there is not a day that goes by that mental health is not part of our short-term plan, long-term plan, and incorporating various trainings. Mayor Pro Tem Castriota just sent out the email that subsequent to the January 12th plan, that we're solidifying the CHIP. We work in close partnership with mental health partners as well as Community Reach. Community Reach does take up, and they although virtual, they continue to have in-person meetings. I think we've come a long way with regards to mental health and access by really shoring up those two pieces. And I can say from the work with public health and human services that substance use is certainly a subset of mental health, but the conversations and the trainings that we have with regards to mental health, it's a much more, it's a holistic approach. And so if council directs us to take a more focused approach, you know, we can certainly do that with the study session. But the email really does outline the comprehensive approach that starts with reducing the stigma, and then it begins to drill down. So it sets the common language, kind of the glossary of the overall mental health, what the resources are, what the components are, again, and then one of the subsets is substance use and the impact that they may have. And then, of course, marijuana is yet another subset under substance use. So again, at council direction, so we're headed in, and again, that email lays it out between the mental health programs and the CHIP program. And we're focused on really having it be an overall comprehensive, where each one of our departments that touch any part of the community continues to focus on the mental health aspect. If you'd like us to drill down, we can certainly do that.
I think that's what council's asking you to do, that, you know, that to move it up in priority and drill down to more of the mental health issues. I mean, you tell me what you think, direct, you know, because we heard 8 different people speak, but what I'm hearing is people want to address mental health issues, including addiction and other, but most don't want to just break out of marijuana. They want it to be a larger discussion.
And that's the direction that we're headed in.
Yeah, and maybe you can give us some feedback through mail or whatever.
I think the question is the two specific individuals, the Councilmember Groom and Councilmember Law Evans, would like to present at the study session. So I don't want staff to be in the position of kind of picking and choosing the.
Well, but I think your staff is in that position. What I heard from council was that council certainly thinks those two should be considered, but they want your public health group to pick the people they think are best to address council on that, and that these two should not be assumed. Council's not giving you the direction to use these two people. They're not giving you the direction not to use these two people. They're giving the public health and, you know, and the mental health partners the ability to maybe recommend additional people or different. And yes. You know, I'm not seeing anybody disagreeing with what I'm saying there. This is always the toughest part of the meeting for me. So does that help, Jennifer?
It does. Yeah, I think we're headed in that direction anyway, Mayor. So
I do too.
we're not deviating from it. So we'll lock in some timeframes in addition to what we have with regards to the CHIP plan.
Correct. Okay, so we will leave it there. I mean, so that's your direction. And we'll just go ahead and close out the meeting. 8:19, goodness. That concludes the items on this evening's agenda. If there is any other business come before the council, noting none, there being no further business, the special meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, all.